I was driving down Interstate 25 from Denver to Colorado Springs, my trunk loaded with $420 worth of Thanksgiving dinner, feeling that familiar mix of excitement and anxiety that comes with family gatherings. This year was going to be different. This year, I was finally in a position to give back to my family, to show them how much I appreciated everything they had done for me growing up. I had worked overtime for 3 weeks straight just to afford this feast, and I could already picture my mom, Linda's face lighting up when she saw the spread. What I could not picture was the envelope she would hand me after dinner, or how those 10 typed rules inside would change everything between us forever. Before I share what happened during that Thanksgiving dinner, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever had difficult experiences with family dynamics, please hit that like button so I know I am not alone in this. And do not forget to subscribe, because what happened after that dinner completely transformed my relationship with my mother. And trust me, you will not want to miss how this story unfolds. As I pulled into my mom's driveway in Colorado Springs that Thursday afternoon, I felt genuinely hopeful for the first time in months. The past few years had been challenging for our family. Mom had been widowed for 5 years now, working part-time at the local bank and struggling to keep up with the mortgage on the house where my brother David, his wife Amanda, and their 2 kids had been living for the past 6 months. David worked construction when he could find jobs, but the work was seasonal and unpredictable. That is exactly why I had splurged on this dinner. I wanted to take one burden off everyone's shoulders and create a memory we could all treasure. I had ordered everything from the upscale grocery store in downtown Denver, a 25-pound organic turkey truffle, stuffing homemade cranberry sauce, garlic mashed potatoes with real cream, and butter green bean casserole with those crispy onions on top, sweet potato souffle, and 4 different pies. I had even bought a new tablecloth-scented candles and fresh flowers to make everything perfect. When I knocked on the front door balancing 3 grocery bags, Mom opened it with a genuine smile. "Grace, honey, you did not have to do all this," she said, but I could see the relief in her eyes as she helped me carry everything into the kitchen. "I wanted to, Mom," I told her, starting to unpack the feast. "You have been working so hard, and with David's family here, I know money is tight. Let me take care of this." For the next 2 hours, we worked side by side in the kitchen, warming everything up and setting the table. It reminded me of when I was little, standing on a step stool to help her cook Sunday dinners. We talked about my job as a marketing director, her work at the bank, and how the kids were doing in school. It felt natural and comfortable in a way it had not in years. David and Amanda arrived around 3:30 with 8-year-old Tyler and 5-year-old Emma, both kids bouncing with excitement about the feast they could smell from the driveway. David looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from worrying about money constantly. But he gave me a genuine hug and thanked me for doing this. "You really went all out, sis," he said, surveying the spread. "This looks like something out of a magazine." Amanda squeezed my hand and whispered, "This means more than you know. The kids have been so worried about Christmas after hearing us talk about bills." Dinner was everything I'd hoped it would be. Tyler told us about his 3rd-grade science project. Emma showed off the tooth she had lost that morning, and even David seemed to relax as we passed dishes around the table. Mom looked happier than I had seen her in years, laughing at the kids' stories and actually complimenting the food without any of her usual subtle criticisms about spending too much money. After we finished eating, I started clearing dishes while Amanda wrangled the kids into the living room for a movie. David and Mom were discussing his potential job prospects, and I could hear the stress creeping back into their voices as they talked about winter work being scarce. "Grace, leave those dishes," Mom called from the dining room. "You paid for everything. The least we can do is clean up." But I had already started loading the dishwasher the same way I always did when I visited. Growing up, we all had assigned chores after every meal, and old habits die hard. Plus, I genuinely wanted to help. That had always been my way of showing love. Around 6:30, I started gathering my things to head back to Denver. I had to work the next day and the drive would take about an hour and a half with holiday traffic. That is when Mom appeared in the kitchen doorway with an envelope in her hands. "Grace, honey, can I talk to you privately for a minute?" she asked, her tone oddly formal. I followed her into her bedroom, assuming she wanted to thank me privately, or maybe give me some leftover food to take home. Instead, she sat on the edge of her bed and patted the spot next to her. "I wanted to give you this," she said, handing me the envelope with what I can only describe as a carefully controlled smile. "I have been thinking about it for a while, and after today, I knew it was time." The envelope was cream-colored and felt substantial, like it contained something important. I assumed it might be a heartfelt thank you note, or maybe some old family photos she had found. My heart actually warmed as I opened it, expecting to read words of gratitude or love. What I found instead was a single sheet of paper, professionally printed on Mom's computer, with a title in bold letters, "If you want to eat with us, again, Grace's rules." I stared at it for a moment, certain I was misreading something. But there it was, clear as day, followed by a numbered list of 10 rules that I was apparently supposed to follow if I wanted to remain welcome at family gatherings. "What is this?" I asked, looking up at Mom in confusion. "Well, sweetheart, I have noticed some things over the years that I think we should address," she said in that same carefully controlled tone. "You are so successful now, and we are all so proud of you. But sometimes success can change people. I thought it would help if we had some clear expectations moving forward." I felt like I had been slapped. Here I was, having just spent nearly half a week's salary on dinner for the family, and she was handing me a list of behavioral corrections like I was a misbehaving teenager. "I need to read this at home," I managed to say, folding the paper and putting it back in the envelope with hands that were suddenly shaking. "Of course, honey," Mom said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "Take your time to think about it. I love you and I just want what is best for our family." I hugged her goodbye, said my goodbyes to everyone else, and somehow made it to my car without breaking down. But as I drove north on I-25, my mind was racing with a mixture of hurt, confusion, and growing anger. I waited until I was safely in my Denver apartment before I opened that envelope again. What I read made my blood run cold. Rule number 1. Always call before visiting, even for holidays. This one stung because I always did call ahead. In fact, I had called Mom 3 times in the past week to coordinate this very dinner. Rule number 2. Bring appropriate gifts for everyone, not just food. This confused me because I had brought gifts. I had given Tyler a science kit, Emma a craft set, Amanda a scented candle, David a gift card to his favorite restaurant, and Mom a beautiful scarf I had seen her admiring online. Rule number 3. Dress more modestly. Your career success does not need to be flaunted. I looked down at my simple black sweater and dark jeans. Apparently wearing clean, well-fitting clothes was now showing off. Rule number 4. Do not dominate conversations with work stories. I tried to remember talking about work at dinner and could only recall answering direct questions about my job when Tyler asked what a marketing director does. Rule number 5. Be more helpful with dishes and cleaning. This one made me actually laugh out loud in disbelief. I had done most of the prep work, served dinner, and was cleaning up when Mom told me to stop. Rule number 6. Show more respect when David shares his opinions. I could not remember disagreeing with David about anything. We had barely talked during dinner, except for casual family conversation. Rule number 7. Do not act like you are better than us because you live in the city. This one cut deep because it revealed what Mom apparently thought about my decision to build a career in Denver. Rule number 8. Appreciate what we do for you instead of always trying to pay for things. I stared at this one for a long time. What they did for me, I was the one constantly helping them financially. Rule number 9. Remember that money cannot buy family love. Another knife to the heart, implying that my generosity was somehow manipulative. Rule number 10. If you cannot follow these simple rules, maybe it is better to stay in Denver. The ultimatum was clear. I sat on my couch reading and rereading this list, trying to understand where it was coming from. None of these accusations matched my actual behavior, and some of them were completely backwards from reality. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about patterns I had noticed over the years, but had chosen to ignore. How Mom would make little comments about my apartment being too fancy, or my car being more than anyone needs. How she would change the subject when I talked about promotions at work, but always seemed interested when I offered to help pay for things. The next day, I called David. I needed to understand if there was some truth to these accusations that I was missing. "Hey, did I come across as arrogant yesterday?" I asked him directly. David was quiet for a long moment. "Grace, why are you asking that?" I told him about the list, reading some of the rules aloud. I could hear him take a deep breath. "She made you a list?" he asked, sounding genuinely surprised. 10 rules I have to follow to eat with the family again," I confirmed. "That is messed up, Grace. You paid for everything yesterday. You helped with cooking and cleaning. You brought gifts for everyone. I do not understand where this is coming from." But as we talked longer, some truth started emerging. David admitted that Mom had been complaining about me showing off with the expensive food. She had told him that I was getting too big for my britches and needed to be brought down a peg. "She said you think you are too good to visit unless you can control everything," David revealed reluctantly. "But Grace, that is not how I see it at all. You are just trying to help." When I called Amanda later that week, she was even more direct. "Your mom is jealous of you," she said bluntly. "She talks about your success like it is something you are doing to hurt her. She acts like you chose to be successful just to make her feel bad about her own life." This conversation led me to start examining our relationship with fresh eyes. I began remembering things I had dismissed or explained away. How Mom had been unsupportive when I applied for college scholarships, saying I should not get too big for my britches. How she had been distant during my college years, claiming I was changing and becoming someone she did not recognize. How even after graduation, when I tried to rebuild our relationship, she would accept my help, but always with comments about how I was trying too hard or overcompensating. Over the following week, I talked to several family members, and a disturbing picture emerged. Mom had been systematically undermining my reputation within our extended family for years. She had told my aunt that I only visited when I could afford to look generous. She had told my cousin that I threw money around to make everyone else feel bad. She had painted me as arrogant and condescending to anyone who would listen. The more I learned, the more I realized that this list was not about improving my behavior. It was about controlling me and punishing me for succeeding beyond what she thought I deserved. But the final straw came when I talked to my cousin Jennifer, who had always been supportive of my career. "Grace, I am so glad you called," Jennifer said. "Your mom has been telling people some really concerning things about you. She told me you only help the family when it makes you look good, and that you secretly look down on all of us for not being as successful as you are." I felt sick. These lies were not just hurting me. They were poisoning my relationships with people I cared about. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was not going to respond to that list with words. I was going to respond with actions. I spent the next week in a strange state of clarity. For the first time in years, I was seeing my relationship with my family without the fog of guilt and obligation that had always clouded my judgment. I started by doing something I had never done before. I tracked exactly how much financial support I had been providing. Going through my bank statements and credit card records, the numbers were staggering. For the past 2 years, I had been secretly paying Mom's car payment every month, $350 like clockwork, because she had mentioned once that money was tight and she was worried about losing her car. I had paid her property taxes the previous year when she got behind, $2,800 that I had transferred without thinking twice, because family helps family. Just last month, I had covered Emma's medical bills when she broke her arm, and David's insurance did not cover everything. $1,200 for emergency room visits and follow-up care. There were the utility bills I had helped with multiple times when David was between jobs. $200 to $400 at a time, adding up to thousands over the months. Christmas presents, birthday gifts, groceries when things got tight, gas money when David needed to travel for job interviews. The list went on and on. In total, I had provided over $15,000 in support over the past 2 years. $15,000 while being criticized for showing off and thinking I was better than them. The math was clear, but the emotional calculation was even more devastating. I had been financially supporting a woman who was emotionally undermining me. I had been enabling someone who was taking my generosity while simultaneously punishing me for the success that made that generosity possible. I called my best friend Sarah that weekend and told her everything. Sarah had always been protective of me, and she had never particularly liked my mother, though she had been polite enough never to say so directly. "Grace," she said after I finished explaining, "your mother is financially abusing you while emotionally manipulating you. She is taking your money and then making you feel guilty for having money to give. That is not normal family dynamics." Sarah had her own experience with toxic family relationships, and she helped me see patterns I had been blind to. "You cannot buy someone's love or respect," she continued, "and anyone who accepts your help while criticizing you for being able to help is not someone who actually loves you. They love what you can do for them." But the conversation that really opened my eyes was with my therapist, Dr. Martinez, whom I had started seeing a few months earlier to deal with work stress. When I told her about the list and the financial situation, she was direct in a way that shocked me. "Grace, you are being used," she said simply. "Your mother has created a dynamic where she benefits from your success while punishing you for it. She gets to feel morally superior by criticizing your wealth while simultaneously depending on that wealth for her survival." The breaking point came in early December when I discovered that Mom had been lying to even more family members about me. My cousin Jennifer called me with more details about what Mom had been saying. "She told Uncle Robert that you only paid for Thanksgiving dinner because you wanted to control what everyone ate," Jennifer said. "And she told Aunt Patricia that you looked down on David for not being as successful as you are." But the most hurtful lie was what she had told Jennifer's teenage daughter, my second cousin Madison, who had been thinking about applying to colleges. "She told Madison that college changes people for the worse," Jennifer said quietly. "She used you as an example, saying that education made you think you were better than your family. Madison decided not to apply to the university program she was excited about. That was when I realized the full scope of the damage Mom's jealousy was causing. She was not just hurting me, she was potentially sabotaging the next generation's opportunities because she could not handle anyone in the family surpassing her level of education and success." I spent the Christmas holidays deliberately staying in Denver, claiming I had to work. I sent gifts but did not visit, and I used the time to research something I had never thought to investigate before Mom's actual financial situation. What I discovered was both enlightening and infuriating. Mom was behind on her mortgage payments and had been for months. The property tax bill I had paid the year before was only the tip of the iceberg. She owed thousands in back payments and was at serious risk of foreclosure. But here's the thing, my monthly help with her car payment and utility bills had been the only thing keeping her afloat. Without my assistance, she would have lost the house months ago. I was not just supporting someone who was emotionally abusing me. I was enabling someone to avoid the natural consequences of their financial choices, while they criticized me for the success that made my help possible. That night, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to stop all financial support immediately. No more car payments, no more utility assistance, no more emergency bailouts. If Mom wanted to treat me like an arrogant outsider while taking my money, she could learn to manage without my money. But I was not going to be cruel about it. I was going to wait until after the holidays, honor my commitment to keeping family drama away from Christmas, and then deliver my message in the same spirit she had delivered hers. On February 15th, Mom's 59th birthday, I was going to give her a gift, too. February 15th arrived gray and cold, typical for Colorado in winter. I had been planning this day for months, and I felt surprisingly calm as I drove down to Colorado Springs with a birthday card in my passenger seat. I had not spoken to Mom since Christmas, despite several text messages from her that grew increasingly concerned as January wore on. "Hope you are doing well, honey. Miss you. Can we talk?" But I had stuck to my plan of giving her space to experience the natural consequences of our last conversation. When I knocked on her door that afternoon, she opened it with a mixture of relief and wariness. "Grace, I am so glad you came," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt desperate. "I have been worried about you." "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, simply handing her the card. She invited me in for coffee, chattering nervously about the weather, David's job prospects, and the kids' school progress. I could see the stress lines around her eyes the way her hands shook slightly as she poured the coffee. The house felt different, too colder, and I noticed she had put extra blankets on the couch. "Mom, open your card," I said gently. She smiled and carefully opened the envelope, probably expecting a gift card or cash, like I usually included. Instead, she found a folded piece of paper attached to the card with a paper clip. Her face went white as she unfolded it and saw the official letterhead, "Notice of default and intention to foreclose." "What is this?" she whispered. "It is your foreclosure notice," I said calmly. "It was mailed to my address because you have been using my address for your mortgage correspondence for the past year. I have been forwarding your mail to you, but this one felt like something you should receive in person." She stared at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. I could see her mind racing, trying to understand what was happening. "Grace, I do not understand. Why did not you just forward this like usual? And why are you giving it to me like this?" I took a deep breath. "Because, Mom, you gave me a list of rules for how to behave if I wanted to eat with the family. So I'm giving you a rule too. Actions have consequences." Her face crumpled, and I could see the realization hitting her. "You stopped helping with my bills," she said, and it was not a question. "I did." "Grace, I could lose the house." "Yes, you could." She started crying, then the kind of tears that come from panic rather than sadness. "How could you do this to me, to your own mother, after everything I've done for you?" And there it was, the same manipulation she had been using for years. I was supposed to feel guilty for having boundaries. I was supposed to sacrifice my own well-being to enable her poor choices. "Mom, what exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. "In the past 5 years, what have you done for me that did not involve accepting my money or my help?" She started listing things. "I raised you. I gave you a home. I loved you when you were difficult and ambitious and did not fit in with the rest of us." "That is what parents are supposed to do," I said. "That is not something I owe you for. And Mom, I did fit in. You made me feel like I did not fit in because my success made you uncomfortable." The conversation that followed was painful, but necessary. I told her about all the lies she had spread about me to family members. I told her about the financial support I had been providing while she criticized me for having the ability to provide it. I explained how the list of rules had not been about improving my behavior, but about controlling and punishing me. "You made me feel like I had to choose between being successful and being loved by my family," I said. "And then you took the money that success provided while making me feel guilty for earning it." She tried to argue, to justify, to make me understand how hard her life had been since Dad died. And I did understand that. But I also understood that her grief and struggle did not give her the right to emotionally abuse me while financially depending on me. "I will not enable you anymore, Mom," I said finally. "If you want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be on equal terms. You have to stop taking my help for granted while criticizing me for being able to help." I left her there with the foreclosure notice and the birthday card, which contained a simple message: "I love you, but I love myself too. Happy birthday." The next few weeks were difficult. Some family members took Mom's side, accusing me of being cruel and abandoning family when they needed help most. But others, including David and Amanda, privately thanked me for finally setting boundaries. "She has been doing the same thing to us," Amanda admitted, "taking our gratitude for letting us live here while constantly criticizing how we raise the kids and manage our money. You standing up to her gave us permission to set boundaries too." 6 weeks later, Mom lost the house. She had to move to a small apartment and take a full-time job at a different bank. For the first time in years, she was forced to live within her actual means rather than relying on my subsidies to maintain a lifestyle she could not afford. And something interesting happened during those weeks of no contact. I felt lighter than I had in years. I was not constantly worried about Mom's latest financial crisis. I was not walking on eggshells trying to be successful enough to help my family, but not so successful that it threatened anyone's ego. On Mother's Day, 3 months after the foreclosure notice incident, Mom called me. "Grace," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice, "I need to apologize to you." We met for coffee in a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between Denver and Colorado Springs. Mom looked different, older, more tired, but also somehow more real. "I was jealous of you," she said simply. "I was jealous of your success and your independence, and I took it out on you while still depending on your help. That was wrong." She had started therapy, she told me, because the stress of losing the house and facing her financial reality had forced her to confront some things about herself. "I realized I was punishing you for becoming everything I'd been too scared to become," she said. "And I was taking your generosity for granted because I was angry that you could afford to be generous when I could not. It was not a perfect apology, and it did not fix everything immediately. But it was honest in a way our relationship had not been for years. We started rebuilding slowly. Coffee dates once a month, then every couple of weeks. I helped her with specific emergencies when she asked directly and showed genuine appreciation, but I did not return to subsidizing her lifestyle. She learned to budget properly and even seemed to take pride in managing on her own. The relationship with the rest of the family shifted too. Some members remained distant, unable to forgive what they saw as my cruelty. But others developed a new respect for me and began setting their own boundaries with family members who took advantage of their generosity. David and Amanda moved out of Mom's apartment 6 months later, having saved enough money for their own place, while Mom was learning to live independently. Our family gatherings became smaller but more genuine, with less underlying tension and resentment. Looking back now, 2 years later, I can see that Mom's list of rules was actually a gift, though not the kind she intended. It forced me to examine a dynamic that had been slowly poisoning my relationship with my family for years. It made me realize that you cannot buy love, respect, or family harmony, but you also cannot let people abuse your generosity just because they share your DNA. Real love does not come with conditions or require you to make yourself smaller so others can feel bigger. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the natural consequences of their choices. And sometimes stepping back allows both of you to step up. The relationship I have with my mother now is not perfect, but it is honest. She respects my boundaries and shows genuine appreciation when I choose to help. I respect her independence and do not try to solve problems she has not asked for help with. We are learning to love each other as adults rather than falling back into patterns that served neither of us. Now, when I think about that Thanksgiving dinner, I do not remember the $420 I spent on food. I remember the priceless lesson I learned about my own worth. And that is a gift that keeps giving every single day. Sometimes family means having the courage to love people enough to let them face reality, even when reality is uncomfortable. Sometimes it means choosing your own peace over keeping others comfortable. And sometimes the most generous thing you can do is stop being generous until generosity is truly appreciated rather than expected. I learned that boundaries are not walls built to keep people out. They are bridges built to let the right kind of love in. And real family, the kind worth keeping, will always find a way to meet you on that bridge. What about you? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your generosity was being taken for granted by family members? Have you had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below, because these experiences can feel so isolating when you are going through them. Please hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding your own worth. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone in dealing with complicated family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you are worthy of relationships that lift you up rather than tear you down. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.